Donald Trump wants people to believe the Middle East is a room he can dominate through volume alone, one threat, one post, one performance of toughness. But the moment a conflict with Iran touches energy choke points, proxy networks, nuclear facilities, and the fragile trust of U.S. allies, that fantasy runs straight into reality. Because this is not a stage, it is a machine. A machine made of tankers, gas fields, air defenses, militias, satellites, insurance markets, and governments that do not want to be collateral damage in someone else's macho theater. Once that machine starts grinding, nobody controls it with swagger, and that is the trap surrounding Trump and Iran. His entire brand is built on appearing stronger than everyone else in the room. Iran's entire regional playbook is built on proving that brute force can be made expensive, messy, and politically humiliating, not with armies marching in straight lines, with leverage, with pressure points, with escalation that spreads sideways. In the next few minutes, I am going to show you exactly what just happened in the wider Iran crisis, why Trump-style strongman politics never really solves this problem, and why the world you are living in today looks different from the one people imagined when they thought the Middle East could still be managed with slogans. If your business partner kept insulting you in public, ripping up agreements, threatening your customers, and then calling only when the warehouse was on fire, how long before you quietly built a backup plan without him? Hold that thought, because that is exactly what allies, rivals, and regional powers do when they stop trusting Washington's judgment. Drop your answer in the comments. At what point does loyalty turn into self-protection? Let us rewind the clock. This did not start with one missile, one speech, or one viral clip. It started when structured diplomacy was traded for maximalist theater. Trump's withdrawal from the Iran nuclear deal sent a message: agreements could be shredded, and pressure alone would do the work of strategy. Then came maximum sanctions, the killing of Qasem Soleimani, and the belief that Tehran would simply absorb blow after blow without finding new ways to respond. That was the miscalculation. The Trump worldview treats outrage as leverage. It assumes that if you hit hard enough, threaten loudly enough, and scare everyone in the room, the other side will freeze. But Iran did not freeze. It adapted. It invested in missiles and drones. It deepened ties with proxies. It expanded links with Russia and China. It learned to survive sanctions. It watched how exposed Gulf energy infrastructure is, how vulnerable shipping lanes are, and how reluctant regional states are to be dragged into a full-scale war. And while Washington often performs power in public, Tehran and the middle powers around it have spent years building Plan B in private. Oman kept lines of communication open. Qatar balanced relationships that often look contradictory from the outside. Saudi Arabia, after the 2019 attack on Abqaiq, learned the hard way that modern energy systems can be shaken without a conventional invasion. This was never just about rage, it was about positioning, networks, redundancy, off-ramps. So now let us get to the receipts. Receipt number 1, the direct retaliation precedent. In April 2024, after the strike on Iran's diplomatic compound in Damascus, Tehran launched a large-scale direct drone and missile attack on Israel from Iranian territory that mattered. For years, much of the region operated in the gray zone: deniable strikes, proxies, cyber activity, covert operations, pressure without formal war. That attack showed the shadow war could become visible war. Officially, Iran framed it as a calibrated act of self-defense. In plain language, the signal was this: if you hit assets Tehran sees as strategic or sovereign, it may decide not to answer indirectly. It may answer directly, publicly, and at scale. Now, that does not mean Iran wants unlimited war. It does not. But it does mean the old assumption that Tehran would always stay hidden behind militias is broken. The point was not only battlefield damage. The point was signaling. The point was to show reach, patience, and willingness to raise the temperature. That silence in a lot of Western commentary was deafening. People kept asking whether the attack was fully successful. They missed the larger issue. The message had already landed. Tehran was telling Washington, Jerusalem, and every Gulf capital that the rules had changed. Shadowboxing could turn into open signaling very fast. And this is where a Trump-style Iran confrontation becomes economically terrifying. The giant gas reservoir shared by Iran and Qatar is known as South Pars on the Iranian side and North Field on the Qatari side. It is one of the most important energy assets on Earth. Qatar sits at the center of global LNG trade, roughly 1/3 of it by some estimates. The Strait of Hormuz, meanwhile, carries about a fifth of the world's oil consumption and a huge volume of LNG. What does that mean in plain English? It means you do not wage a clean war in the engine room of the global economy. You do not casually threaten Iran, talk about strikes, dare retaliation, and then act surprised when energy markets twitch, insurance costs rise, and every government that depends on stable Gulf exports starts panicking. Ask Saudi Arabia what 2019 taught them when Abqaiq was hit. A few drones and missiles can scramble far. More than one facility, they can scramble assumptions. Official language from governments is always about energy security, freedom of navigation, stability, de-escalation, but strip the jargon away and here is the reality. If the Gulf burns, your fuel bill changes, your grocery bill changes, shipping routes change, industrial costs change, airline costs change. Once traders start pricing in risk, ordinary people pay first. That is why any leader who treats war with Iran like a branding exercise is not being tough. He is playing chicken inside the world's fuel tank. Receipt number 3. The networked battlefield, the part strongmen never understand because it does not look cinematic enough. Iran does not need to defeat the United States in a conventional showdown. It needs to show that American forces, partners, and supply lines are exposed across a huge geography. We already know what that looks like. After the Soleimani strike, Iran fired missiles at Al-Asad Air Base and more than 100 U.S. service members were later diagnosed with traumatic brain injuries. In early 2024, 3 U.S. troops were killed at Tower 22 in Jordan in an attack tied to Iran-backed militants. In the Red Sea, Houthi attacks disrupted global shipping and forced costly rerouting. That is the real map, not one front. A web: Iraq, Syria, Jordan, the Gulf, the Red Sea, shipping lanes, bases, air defense systems, partner infrastructure. Officially, the language is force protection and coalition defense. In plain language, it means a cheap drone, a militia rocket, or a deniable strike can make a superpower look clumsy, overextended, and reactive. This theater has more doors than Washington has locks, and let me be clear, I am not romanticizing Tehran. Iran's regime is repressive, its proxies have blood on their hands, its strategy is dangerous, but analysis is not cheerleading. If you are serious about preventing war, you have to understand how the other side thinks, and the other side thinks in layers, not in slogans. If this story is connecting dots you have not seen assembled anywhere else, you are already ahead of most people watching this unfold. Hit subscribe right now. This is moving faster than any single outlet can track, and you need to be here when the next piece drops. Most leaders, when challenged, get emotional. They want immediate catharsis. They want the big speech, the bigger threat, the clip that goes viral. Trump is almost a caricature of that instinct. He confuses dominance with noise. He confuses intimidation with control. He believes if he sounds more certain than everyone else, reality will bend around him. But that is not how this arena works. Iran's strategists, however ruthless, are not trying to win a cable news segment. They are trying to make every escalation decision come with secondary costs. They cultivate proxies, they invest in missile and drone production, they build relationships with Moscow and Beijing, they lean on geography, they study choke points, they understand that even wealthy partners in the Gulf hate unpredictability, they know that if they can make Washington look reckless and lonely, they are already scoring points. And while Trump obsesses over the image of masculine power, the network around him often forgets the basic lesson of the region. You do not beat a layered system with television bravado. You do not solve a web with a hammer. If anything, you make the web tighter. You make middle powers hedge. You make allies wonder whether the United States is still a stabilizer or just another accelerant. That is why the diplomacy angle matters so much. Oman has repeatedly played mediator between Washington and Tehran. Qatar has often been a channel when others could not talk. The Gulf states do not want to be the battlefield for somebody else's revenge fantasy. So when a U.S. leader acts impulsively, insults allies, talks about them like subordinates, and then expects automatic help when the crisis spirals, he is not just making a military mistake, he is making an alliance mistake, and those mistakes outlast any single news cycle. So what does this actually mean for you? It means if you live in the United States, Europe, or any economy plugged into global trade, you are not outside this story. If you work in trucking, manufacturing, farming, airlines, shipping, chemicals, or defense, you are not outside this story. If you live in a military family, you are definitely not outside this story. Because once energy markets start pricing in Gulf instability, the effect does not stay on a Bloomberg terminal. It moves into household budgets, it moves into inflation, it moves into interest rate politics, it moves into insurance, it moves into the cost of moving goods. And once companies begin rerouting supply chains, signing alternative energy contracts, or diversifying away from politically unstable corridors, they do not instantly reverse course just because some leaders calm down later. The routes change, the contracts change, the jobs follow the new routes, and some of them do not come back. There is also a deeper geopolitical cost. If America's partners conclude that Washington may start fires and then lecture everyone else to bring the hoses, they build workarounds, they buy from different suppliers, they deepen ties with other security actors, they become more transactional. That is how great powers lose centrality, not in one dramatic collapse, but through a slow, controlled demolition of trust. So where does this go next? Scenario 1. A managed reset back channels through Oman, Qatar, Europe, and others create a face-saving pause. Public rhetoric stays heated, but the major players step back from direct confrontation. Shipping lanes stabilize, markets cool somewhat. A deal or understanding emerges even if nobody admits it cleanly, but the structural change remains. Allies still hedge, energy buyers still diversify. The lesson is learned. Domino realignment. Middle powers watch the crisis and decide the old model is too risky. Gulf states keep balancing between Washington, Beijing, and regional rivals. Europe looks harder at energy redundancy. Asian importers diversify supply and shipping exposure. The United States remains powerful, very powerful, but no longer the unquestioned axis around which every security and energy decision turns. This is how a new map gets drawn, not with one treaty, but with dozens of quiet adjustments. Scenario 3, the spiral, and this is the scenario nobody wants to name out loud. A direct U.S.-Iran clash, whether sparked by strikes, retaliation, or a chain of proxy attacks, widens into a regional emergency. Bases become targets, shipping is disrupted, oil spikes, cyber attacks intensify, markets panic, and if military action gets anywhere near nuclear facilities, the warnings from nuclear safety experts and international monitors become impossible to ignore. Some consequences do not end when the bombing stops. They last 4 years, maybe decades. And that brings us to the final frame. The deeper lesson here is not just about Trump, it is about what happens when blunt power runs into a networked world. Trump did not invent the temptation to treat the Middle East like a place that can be bullied into obedience. But he is one of the purest expressions of that temptation, loud, impulsive, performative, deeply convinced that force plus ego equals order. It does not here, not anymore. The relationship between the United States, its allies, and the wider Middle East will never be the same once enough actors decide they need alternatives. Even if one leader leaves tomorrow, the lesson stays. You never put all your strategic eggs in one basket. Once bypasses are built, they do not vanish. They become the new normal. So here are the big questions. Did Trump-style strongman politics ever really deter Iran? Or did it teach Tehran exactly how to raise the cost of confrontation? Is this smart self-protection by regional states or the beginning of a much more fragmented and dangerous order? And did Washington lose leverage because its enemies got stronger or because its own political culture confused spectacle with strategy? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And subscribe because the next chapter, the Strait of Hormuz, Red Sea pressure, nuclear risk, and the future of U.S. alliances in the Gulf is coming fast. This story is not slowing down. Do not look away. This content is commentary and analysis for informational purposes only. It does not constitute financial, legal, or geopolitical advice. The views expressed represent the analytical perspective of the narrator based on publicly available reporting and should not be taken as established fact. Events remain uncertain or contested. Consult qualified experts before making any decisions based on geopolitical developments.